Welcome to the session 3 of FinRise, a virtual career fair for finance and allied professionals. With an aim to provide the right opportunities to the qualified and semi-qualified finance professionals, Monster FinRise provides access to thousands of jobs to the finance professionals having experience up to 10 years. The event will be hosted online on 8th and 9th October, where you can interact with the recruiters directly and learn from the top finance experts in the industry by attending their sessions. If you want to participate in this event, you can simply register yourself through the link given in the description box of this YouTube video. Now, this session on cracking the finance interview is conducted to help the finance professionals learn about the expectations of the hiring managers and share some tips and insights on how an interview can be given. To discuss, to discuss about this topic, we have a panel of 4 speakers. First speaker for the session is Dhawal Parvatikar, who is a chartered accountant and an IIM Ahmedabad alumnus. He is a business-focused finance leader with close to 11 years of experience in managerial and business finance roles with leading corporations like Bharat Petroleum, Publicis Group, and Omni Group. Currently, he serves FleishmanHillard as the CFO. Along with this, he is also a mentor and a career coach helping CA, CPA, CMS get better career direction. Our next speaker is Ashish Arora, who has 16 plus years of experience at Cvent, where he started as a senior finance manager and now serves as the vice president in the finance department. Qualified from the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, he has rich experience in financial planning and analysis, budgeting and forecasting, management accounting, and reporting. Next, we have Viswanathan, who is the Executive Director at Profectus Learning and Talent Solutions Private Limited. At Profectus, he heads the training and consulting verticals and is engaged in providing the best-in-class financial modeling and analytics solution to clients across the globe. He is a chartered accountant with over 16 years of experience in corporate finance, research, consulting, and training. And the fourth speaker for today is Pranav Modi, who is CA and CS with 11 years of experience with a focus on financial planning and analysis, business finance, and investment banking. Currently, he heads financial planning and analysis at Hubilo. Prior to this, Pranav has worked at organizations like Reliance, Vodafone, Flock, Zeta Suite, and Clevertap. Welcome Dhawal, Ashish, Vishwanathan, and Pranav to this session.
Thank you, Anisha.
Thanks, Manisha.
Let me quickly start with the questions. So, Dhaval, we'll start with you. So, tell us something about the different profiles you applied for, and how you prepared for the interviews when you started your journey, so that the young professionals can learn from you.
Right. When I started off, I was like super naive, and I accept that. And I just started applying anywhere and everywhere. But I soon realized that that strategy doesn't work. One needs to go through the job description, prepare well, right? That is absolutely important. Some of my early realizations about the interview process is that I used to always prepare for interviews like an examination. I used to be always on my toes with all the accounting standards and everything. But I soon realized that that's not what the employers are looking for, right? We can always be honest in the interview by saying that I've read this somewhere, but I'm not able to recollect the exact concept. I have to refer to my books. If you're just honest in the interview, I think that does the job, because you're not required to recollect things like an examination. That was the first stark difference that I can recollect. The other thing is that one needs to back your resume with solid stories, because the interviewer is going to grill you on what you have written in your resume. Like if you have written some cost saving assignment in your resume, then be prepared with a backstory about it. Otherwise, otherwise it'll feel like you are bluffing something on your resume. So you have to be the honest person, honest self that is presented on the resume. That were my early learnings and realizations.
Right. I think all of us go through this phase in all our journeys. So Ashish, what do you think? What are your views on this? How did you start when you Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, sure. I mean, look, Dhawal has actually nailed it. I actually had some, I was going through the thoughts as to what I'm going to speak, and as Dhawal was speaking, I was like exactly what I wanted to speak, right? So he's covered most of it, right? So one thing that people don't really understand, speaking of resumes, because Dhawal said, I have seen people having 3-page resumes when they're freshers, or when they have 3 years of experience, 4-page resumes, right? All of us here could vouch for it. Nobody typically goes beyond the first page, right? So no need of padding your resumes with the stuff that is not relevant, right? Keep it crisp, keep it short, 1 page, and be good at what you're saying, which is very, very important, right? Whatever you have written there, you got to have examples and you got to have stories, like Dhaval said. That's very, very important. Like, all of a sudden, if I look at a 3-page resume, first thing that goes in my mind is, okay, this person is probably padding. So let me browse through in the 45-minute interview. Let me first figure out what am I going to ask, right? So very important. The other thing that I'm actually very, very surprised is that most people don't really research about the company and the leadership team. So when they come into an interview and you're talking to them and you're like, okay, what do you know about a company? They'll say, yeah, your company does this. Most people don't really go to the website. Some people just go to the website, right? Very, very important. Go through you're there for a career, right? It's like, for example, if you're going for a wedding, if you're going to get married, would you not research about the person? Similarly, if you're going for a career, why won't you research about the company? Research about the company, research about the leadership team. In today's world, you can go to LinkedIn and figure out, okay, what has that person done? Can you learn from that person? All very, very important. So those are some of the things that I think I can add on to what Dhawal already said.
right. So when it comes to also applying jobs for finance roles, what do you think should be the top things or top skills that should be added to one's resumes, or that are very important being being for a finance individual applying for a job?
Uh, in my look, the way I look at people is, if someone is applying for a financial job, right, be it accounting side or be it FP&A side, they would have the basic skill set of either they're a chartered accountant or they're an MBA finance or they're a CGMA. So they've done that, right? So one is brushing up on that, but that's basic hygiene, right? What you essentially need to do, in my opinion, is, at least what I look for people when I'm talking to them, is, do they really, like, at least for financial planning analysis, if I give them a problem, are they able to break down a problem into smaller sections and try to solve for it? Or if I put them in an ambiguous situation, how do they react to it? Because we live in a VUCA world. We live in a world which is very, very ambiguous, right? And most of the bookish things are available on internet, right? What value does an professional adds is, how are they working with the teams? How are they working with business, right? If you're a finance, you can be one type of finance person who's just saying debit credit, but the world does not understand their language. Are they articulate? Are they able to take the financial statements and convert it into stories? And are they able to talk to business in simple layman terms, right? Most of the times I talk to a marketing person and say, you know what, this person in your team is really good, but I don't really understand what he's saying because I'm not a finance person. He keeps on talking about, or he or she keeps on talking about debit credit, but I don't want to know. I don't know, right? So those are the skills, right? That someone should learn as part of when they're aiming for a career in finance in today's world.
Right, right. So Vishwanathan, question to you. What do you think are some top questions that are mostly asked in interviews, especially from the perspective of a finance professional? Maybe at different levels in the career, and also how these questions should be approached by the candidate.
When it comes to questions, in a way, it depends on what kind of roles you're going for, right? Because when we say finance, finance is a much vast area. So if you look at for somebody, finance includes financial reporting, right? So when you go to a role which really involves a lot of financial reporting, you are likely to encounter a lot of questions on, let us say, Ind AS and the gap. You may have a lot of questions coming on that. On the other hand, if you're going as a financial analyst, then you may face a lot of questions related to how you interpret financial statements and how certain, let's say, transaction or an event could impact a company financially, right? Sometimes these questions are just to test your analytical ability. So one of the questions we used to often ask is, how does a change in depreciation method affect your, let's say, cash flow calculation, assuming no impact on taxes? Now, only if a person really understands the flow of financial statement, they would be able to more than flow of financial statements. If they have good aptitude, they give correct answers. Often people give wrong answers for these kind of questions. So when we ask questions, of course, it depends on the level and the role you are applying for. So there is no one standard set of question per se, I would say. But how one should approach, I would like to perhaps endorse what Dhawal also mentioned at the beginning, is that it's not an exam where you have a question and then you give an answer and you move out. A lot of time, if you don't know, you can as well say, I generally tell people that there are three possibilities for when a question is asked to you. One, you know the answer and you know the answer. Two, you don't know the answer. Third is maybe you have some idea, but you're not very clear about what to say. What I tell people is that if you know, tell them the answer. Of course, that's pretty straightforward. If you don't know, rather than saying I don't know, perhaps you could tell them that either I'll come, I made to look at this. I'll probably, I could come back later, or tell them that, I haven't come across this earlier, but this is my best guess. Sometimes you can, based on the question, you can do a guesswork. That's what I would suggest. So keep it like a conversation rather than like an exam Q&A. I know the answer, I don't know the answer. That is one thing I would say in terms of approach, how one should, go about answering these questions. Yes, depending upon and as I said, there is no one standard set of questions one may ask because it all varies role to role. And finance is just such a vast area, starting from taxation, financial reporting, financial analytics, modeling, equity research, investment banking, every domain is different. The set of questions I would ask them is different. So that's from my end, what kind of questions and how I would perhaps expect a person to approach it.
Pranav, is there anything that you would like to add to this?
Yeah, sure. So continuing from where Viswanathan was mentioning that primarily you need to understand more about the role and the job description, which is there. For example, if you're going for an investment banking role as an analyst, you would be expected to know basic financial modeling, what are the different valuation methodologies to be used. Those would be the basic questions wherein you would be expected to know those answers. Let's say if you're going for an FP&A interview, you should be getting an understanding that how do you budget a revenue for this kind of a company in an industry? What are the KPIs which are followed by the company in these industries? So doing a lot of background, very understanding about the company, about industry is very important when you are getting into the interview. And more importantly, if you have not worked on something like this, let's say if you're a fresher or you are probably looking at changing an industry, then you should be very confident about your previous work experience, because there will be questions to try and understand where you stand about doing different projects which you have done, what are the key deliverables. Many times, because I've done a lot of mock interviews of people all across different experiences, some freshers, some experienced people, some even rankers of CAs. But what has happened that many times they are not able to come up to the answers or even for basic things because they fumble up about when they are doing interviews. So it should be more of a candid conversation rather than having an interview kind of a mindset when you are discussing. And always when a question is put to a candidate, I always advise you take 2-3 seconds to think over and then answer. Just don't jump on the bandwagon to answer it. Think through, take a couple of seconds and answer. Even while I am hiring candidates for my different roles which I have hired, I always give them a piece of advice and it has worked really wonders for them.
Right. So from your perspective, do you think that there are few core skills in maybe, different fields in finance that, hiring managers basically look for in the candidate? So if you can point out few of those skills that you think are important.
Yeah, so initially what Ashish mentioned, I'll continue from there. It's probably what you're actually bringing on the table that is more important than what you actually know about things. Like we would probably give them case studies, put in certain kind of scenario understanding, which would basically typically look into from a day-to-day office kind of work. So we would try to understand, well, there is no right or wrong answer. What we see and understand is what is the thought process which the person or the candidate is going through while giving answers to those kind of questions. That is one important thing. And the second thing, obviously, having a hands-off understanding on some of the key metrics which I just mentioned about to you, because that is again important when it comes to a business finance or an FP&A kind of a role. So the candidate should try and understand more about the industry, about the company, get some more clarity about the job description as well. If they are not able to understand any of those things in the job description, try to understand from the HR upfront before even going to the interview, so that they are clear about what kind of questions can come up. Talk to people in LinkedIn with a similar kind of a profile, so that they can understand what they are doing on a day-to-day basis, what are the key things which they do from a project standpoint. So those kind of, that will give a 360-degree view, and when you are actually going and sitting in the interview, it will feel more like a conversation to you rather than having like a question answer kind of a session.
Got it. Is there anything else that anybody would like to add to what Pranav just said?
In terms of what are we looking in the candidates, I think I generally look at a couple of things. One is that I want to judge if the candidate is coachable. That is of prime importance for me, right? Because if they are coachable, we can train them with all the conceptual stuff. That shouldn't be a problem. But they should have a learning attitude versus an entitlement attitude. I have done many CA rank holder interviews as well. They said, yeah, I've come and I have arrived now. Now tell me, what is your company going to give me? That is not the attitude what we are looking for. They should be eager to learn. They should show some interest about the company, about the role, about the person. That's something. And the other thing is that what I really wish to see is that I want the candidates to ask me some smart questions, during the interview or at the end of the interview as well. It's not a one way traffic, right? So they have to ask some smart questions. Like, I have seen candidates asking me some dumb questions like, is it a 5-day week company or a 6-day week company? Boss, you can see it on the website. Okay, ask me something about the role, right? That's what I expect. That what is the curiosity of this candidate about the role that he wants to work in? Like when I went for interviews, I used to ask a couple of questions like, okay, is the business primarily B2B or B2C? That's one question you can ask. If it's a blended kind of a finance manager role, then maybe you can ask how much percentage do you think will be commercial and how much percentage would be compliance? No, these are the kind of questions that we expect the candidates to ask us about the profile, and not some stupid questions here and there, or something like, who will I report to? How big is the team? You're allowed to ask these kind of questions. Make sure you ask them and try and understand the role better from the interviewer.
Right, agree. I think not only for finance, but for like finance, for professionals from different fields, be it marketing or HR, this is something which everyone should keep a hold on. So anything else to add, Viswanathan?
One thing I would say is, specifically from a finance perspective, because finance deals with numbers. So one thing I really look forward for candidates, and it also because of the kind of service our company provides, is strong numerical aptitude. You definitely need to have commercial sense, you need to have business sense, but how strong is your numerical aptitude? That's one thing we really look forward when I look at a person. Definitely skills like, how comfortable are you working with, let's say, Microsoft Excel and other things, but that's critical. But I think what is irreplaceable, which is difficult for us to train a candidate, is your aptitude, what you bring on the table. We can teach you, let's say, for example, if an MBA comes in, I can teach that person, we can train them on, let's say, IFRS. We can train that person on Excel if the person doesn't know Excel. But the aptitude that they bring in, we look for a very strong numerical aptitude in any person we are looking at. And definitely, like what Dhawal mentioned, very, very important thing is the ability to train them. Are they trainable? Are they coachable? And second, lastly, one more thing we look forward is, that's something we built into our interview or our assessment practice itself is, does the person have the inclination to learn on their own as well? Because at the end of the day, there's a limit to how much you can train them, So when we were getting trained in CA and all, it was training through fire. I mean, you will be like, look at the Income Tax Act, you come, you draft the appeal, the act, the book is right there, you draft the appeal yourself. That's how, we kind of were groomed. At least to an extent, today you have Google and everything right in front of you. Can you go to a Google, find out a solution? Because what we expect as a person should, nobody knows everything, but at least when you bring to a problem, we expect a person to at least offer some solution. Okay, I've thought about it. This is what I think could be done. Please let me know whether it's workable or if there is a better solution, rather than somebody coming and saying, I don't know what it is. That becomes very difficult, especially when you're looking at somebody to handle senior roles. So that's one thing I would say.
Great, great. So one thing that I'd like to know from all the panelists today is some insights from the best interview that you have had with a candidate, and few reasons what made you think that the candidate was very deserving for this role. So we'll just start with you only, Viswanathan.
Sure. See, when you talk about, I can tell you both best and worst interviews, right? I'll start with the worst interviews. The worst interviews where a candidate gives me a wrong answer with all confidence. When they, because I can understand when somebody says, I don't know. Well, none of us know everything. But when somebody throws a wrong answer at you with all confidence, I once had a candidate actually that ways. Any question you ask, the answer would come in next second and it would be wrong. I mean, it could be right, but sometimes it would be wrong, but this candidate would still give such a strong, confident answer. What is EPS? EPS is net profit divided by equity share capital. You're like, okay, then what is the difference between EPS and ROE? They are same. I mean, the person was giving very quick answers and everything was wrong. So we were like, that was the worst interview, I would say. The best interview is basically where a person, as I said, where a person converses with you, where you can clearly see the person's thought process coming in. So once I was interviewing a candidate, because in some of the roles we look at, the skill sets we look for is not just about numerical aptitude, as I said, and finance knowledge. Person has to have good communication skills, good writing skills. We look for a lot of things in a candidate. So there was a candidate who actually came for an interview, and it's the way the person was talking about the ideas. You ask a question, the way they were explaining, because then I know that, this candidate, if I put this candidate in front of the client, right, because we serve the clients and, I want somebody to take the clients through the files, everything. And we know that, this person is really good at that. The person was not necessarily very strong at answers. They in fact came and, there were quite a lot of situations when I asked the person a question, something like, do you know impairment of asset? And this person was not from an accounting background. They was like, no, I don't know impairment of asset. But this is what I guess, as I said, at the beginning. So this is what the person was saying, I think this is what it means, but I'm not from the accounting background. I don't know. So the person was conversing with us and the communication was very clear and the clarity was very good with the client in terms of what they know, what they don't know. And that's when we thought, this person has to be recruited. I mean, yes, the person doesn't meet all my knowledge requirement that is missing, but we like the attitude, we like the clarity, and I know the person is trainable. These three boxes are ticked up. That's fine, because it's really difficult to get somebody who ticks all the boxes and also your salary, right? Who ticks all the boxes and accepts your salary. That's very difficult. So that was one of the best interviews I had. Yeah.
Great. So Ashish, you also have some of these instances that you would like to share.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's kind of similar. Like I would not pick one good interview and one bad interview, but the traces are the same thing, right? Whenever someone is asking a lot of questions, right? When someone is curious, they show curiosity and they say, look, I don't necessarily know this. I think this could be the right thing. Why don't you help me? Let's discuss this, right? I've had interviews where in an hour interview, I am answering questions for the 30 minutes. In the first 30 minutes, I'm asking, like, that's the kind of interview that your person knows. Okay, first, they are not that defensive. Okay, I don't know this thing, right? They're okay. Not everybody knows everything, right? But they're willing to learn that and willing to have that conversation, which is very, very important. And they're able to articulate their thoughts, right? Those are generally good interviews. And, if someone comes with that sense of entitlement and saying, you know what, this is what it is, and I know this, right? And those are typically the people you don't really necessarily need in your team. And one thing I would like to also add is typically, it also is about culture, right? Because you already have a team, and if you're hiring someone from outside, you're in your mind, you're thinking, okay, is this person a cultural fit? So when that cultural fit thing comes in, it's always good to have that conversation. And when you're talking to the person, you also want to know, okay, how does this person react in certain circumstances, right? So, what were some of the failures, right? Good candidates generally talk about, okay, this is what I did and I failed in this, right? And they have no issues talking about that failure because they know failure is a part of the long-term journey, right? Things like that. When you bring out that personal flavor, and those are typically generally good interviews.
Got it. Pranav, anything that you would want to add from your experience?
Yeah, sure. So exactly continuing from where other panelists were discussing about. So we actually ended up hiring a person as an FP&A manager who didn't even have an experience in FP&A. The reason was that the way he used to understand the things, the way he could articulate his thought process, that was really good, wherein we could actually go ahead and step ahead and coach that particular candidate in different things, because what mattered to us is about whether that person showed that hunger to basically excel himself in that particular role. And that person was very curious about understanding what are the career growth prospects which he has in the company, how the company is basically about to expand in next 2 to 3 years time frame, while the competition is also growing at a rapid pace. So when you understand that candidate is just not looking about his own growth, but company's growth and how the team is planning to evolve itself, that's when we realize how curious that person is to join into that role. So there are several instances like this wherein we have actually selected candidates even though they didn't have the relevant background, because they had all these different sets of qualities.
Got it. Dhawal, from your side.
I remember one interview which I was doing, and successively I was kind of getting candidates who, when they appeared in front of me, were completely different from what they had written in their resume. And there was this one candidate who turned out to be exactly what he had written in his resume. I even ended up complimenting him at the end of the interview, saying that, boss, I think this was the best interview that I had. And whatever you have written in your resume, you are exactly the same. You have the right stories, you've worked on these things, what you are actually talking about, and the flow of the resume, everything was kind of perfect. So that I feel is missing many times. You make sure that your resume truly reflects you. Okay, it shouldn't happen that the interviewer finds some other person when he's looking at the resume, and the person when he's actually meeting him.
Got it. So my last question was on some tips that you would like to share for the finance professionals while they give interview. While I feel that a lot of things have already been answered, but if there is anything to add, we can go ahead from you, Dhawal, and then maybe we can move on to other panelists.
Like I said, yeah, I think show some curiosity in the interview without sounding too desperate. That would be number one. Number two, ask the right questions. Ask as many questions as you can about the profile. Even during the interview, if you are being judged on some technical aspects, make sure that you ask some more questions before you and get some clarity, and then try and answer. Like, for example, if you're being asked a question about revenue accrual, you should ask questions like, how long is the contract? What is the contract duration? How is the deliverable being met? You can ask some questions, and then try and get more clarity, and then give the final answer. Don't be in a hurry to give the final answer. That would be another tip. And just stay positive and honest in the interview. If you don't know anything, please say, I don't know this. I'll have to go back to my books and refer something.
Great. So anything else that other panelists would like to add?
One thing I would like to say is that, whatever you've written in your resume, right, make sure that you can talk about it. Whatever is your experience that you've written that, I've done these things, make sure you can explain it, especially if you've written anything as strengths. Make sure that that is indeed your strength. Because, for example, when a resume comes to me, the interview, typically, I mean, it's not just me, even a lot of my colleagues, our interview starts with saying that, okay, you say you're really good at, let's say, IFRS, then tell me what, tell me about, what are the new changes that have happened in IFRS, right? Or if you're talking about financial modeling, I would say, now, how would you model, let's say, for a Maruti? So whatever you say is your strength, make sure that you can talk about those strength areas. Otherwise, probably don't write about it, because, the first impression, as they say, if you give me first 5 questions, you answer it right, the balance 3 are wrong, I may still select you. If the first 3 out of 3 are wrong, I'll probably say, thanks for coming, right? I wouldn't even ask you the balance 5 questions. So anything that you say is your strength, be prepared on it, be prepared to talk about your experience. And even the qualitative aspects, what I would say is, because, everybody would say strong leadership skills, strong communication skills. I've seen resumes with a lot of spelling mistakes, but still claim strong written communication skills, so if you're writing anything as a strength on the software aspect, think of 1 or 2 events that you can keep to support it. If you say, I have a strong leadership skills, when have you exhibited it? Because anybody can write this. All of us can write all these things. I'm a team worker. Show me a situation where you exhibited the team working skills. So that I would say, be prepared on your resume, whatever you've written, you should be very clear on that. You should be able to talk about that and back everything there. And that's something I would say.
Yeah. So Ashish, anything from your side?
Yeah, I think both Dhawal and Viswanathan has summed that up well. The only other thing I'd just reiterate is know the company and know the leadership team. Know your interviewers, right? Ask the HR person first, okay, who's going to be interviewing me? Could you give me their names and research about them? Today, in today's world, you can research. That ways, you already know the person you're going to be talking to and potentially talk to them about their interests as well. Give it a two-way, let it be a two-way street rather than just answering questions. Ask, let's say, for someone is from a particular college, ask them about that. How was your experience? Or someone is from a particular company, ask them about that. That kind of helps you not just in that particular interview, but generally it helps you understand what is going on in the industry, right? Let it be a good conversation and don't just think that this is end all be all. Look, either I'll get this job or I don't get this job, right? There is always a job for someone, right? You have to figure out, is that the right match for you as well, and is that company the right match for you, and are you the right match for the company? So you have to think about it that way and take it that way rather than just thinking, okay, I'll just get this job at anywhere, whatever is the company, whatever is the profile, I don't care about it, right? Go with the attitude of learning even in the interview.
Got it, got it. Pranav, you would like to add something?
Yeah, sure. So I would look at, while continuing from what the panelists said, I would rather also highlight some softer skills also, like you should look more energetic and confident while you are actually having these discussions. If you are looking little lethargic or less energetic, the interviewer will feel that you are not so much keen to join this particular company or not so interested in the role. You're just joining this for the heck of it. So that is something really important while you are having the conversation during an interview process. And also more importantly, especially when you are in a virtual setup where you are having virtual interviews, please ensure that you have a amazing proper bandwidth with less disturbance surrounding, because I've seen a lot of interviews where there is dog barking in the background and you are just not able to hear what the candidate is trying to say. So those kind of experiences also are very important, because you just have 45 minutes to 1 hour time frame wherein you are able to sell yourself to the best possible extent. Also keep a like a small notepad or a pen ready so that you can basically, whatever the questions are asked, you can work around some calculation and give them the answers. Just don't be unprepared for those kind of interviews. And one last thing, primarily for a fresher CA, what I would suggest that just don't have one CV for different jobs which you are applying. So different kind of roles would have different skill sets which would be needed. So you should have customize your CV basis the kind of different job requirements which you need. That is something which I've seen a lot, which is lacking in a primarily from a fresher or 0 to 2 years kind of experience here. That is one thing which I would like to highlight.
Great. I think it was great talking to all of you, and it was really an insightful session. And I'm really sure that it would help a lot of finance professionals to learn and add skills to their profile so that they can really crack the interview when they go for the next round. Thanks a lot, Dhawal, Ashish, Pranav, and Vishwanath for joining us today for this conversation. If any finance professional is watching this video, I hope that this was useful for you. Stay tuned for more content and register to FinRise to get job opportunities from the top companies in India. There's this registration link in the description box that you can use to register for this event. And thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you, Anisha. Thanks
everyone.
once